When he hurt you, he thought the pain would be yours to carry forever. He believed he could walk away untouched while you picked up the pieces, but life has a way of revealing truths over time, and now, slowly, quietly, and unmistakably, he's beginning to feel the weight of what he did, because the pain he caused didn't disappear, it came back as his lesson. When he hurt you, he assumed the impact would stay contained within your world. He believed the pain he caused was something you would quietly absorb, something you would eventually get over, something that would fade without leaving any lasting trace on him. People who cause deep emotional hurt often operate from a place of detachment. They think they can walk away clean while you're left sorting through the wreckage. He thought your heartbreak would be a temporary storm on your side, something that might shake you but would never ripple back into his life. But that's where he underestimated the truth. Pain doesn't evaporate just because the person who caused it isn't looking. Life has a remarkable way of revealing truth, often slowly, often silently, but always inevitably. The pain he caused you didn't just disappear, it transformed. It shaped you, pushed you to grow, forced you to recognize your strength, and made you rethink your boundaries. Your healing became a journey he never anticipated, while he expected you to stay wounded, stuck, or dependent on the connection he broke. You instead used that pain as fuel. Over time, the hurt he caused became your teacher. It showed you what you would no longer tolerate, what you truly deserved, and how to rise from something that was meant to break you. And because of that, life didn't simply repair you, it refined you. Meanwhile, he continued on as if nothing happened, unaware that life had already begun preparing the same lesson for him, just in a different form. The irony is that the moment he caused you pain was the moment life began setting up his experience of it. Not out of revenge, not out of karma in a dramatic sense, but simply because actions always return to their source. When you hurt someone who loved you genuinely, patiently, and deeply, the universe doesn't ignore that. The consequences may not show up immediately, but they accumulate. The neglect he showed you becomes the same neglect he receives from others. The lack of appreciation he offered you becomes the lack of appreciation he gets in future relationships. The emotional insecurity he created in your heart becomes the emotional instability he eventually has to confront in his own life. Life is circular. It always returns what we give, and he gave you hurt, indifference, and carelessness. What he thought would stay hidden actually became the foundation for his own lesson. He may have walked away believing that he had escaped any emotional fallout, but slowly he starts to notice patterns. The wrong people stick around, the right people drift away, relationships don't last, peace becomes harder to find, and the emotional ease he once felt becomes a struggle. He begins to feel the weight of loneliness in moments when he expected connection. He finds himself questioning choices that once felt effortless. Little by little, life reveals to him what he failed to see when he had you, that love like yours is not common, that hearts like yours are not replaceable, and that hurting someone who genuinely cared for him was not something he could outrun. The lesson he is facing now is not the same pain you felt. It is the consequence of his own actions unfolding in slow, deliberate waves. Where your pain forced you to rise, his forces him to realize. His quiet moments become reminders of what he lost. His frustrations become echoes of the hurt he caused. Life is not punishing him, it's educating him. And the truth behind the first keynote becomes clear. He thought your pain belonged to you, but it became the very lesson he has to carry. The suffering that once lived in your heart has become the realization living in his. It didn't stay with you. It simply waited for the right moment to return to him, slowly, steadily, and unmistakably. When someone hurts you deeply, especially someone you gave your heart to, they often do it from a place of carelessness, immaturity, or ego. And in the moment, it can feel like they walk away untouched while you're the one left carrying the emotional wreckage. But what we don't always see is what begins happening quietly on their side once the dust settles. This is about the delayed emotional consequences that follow a person who caused real damage to someone who loved them genuinely. People think life hurts them through punishment, but most of the time, life simply reveals to them what they lost. And that revelation hits harder than any revenge ever could. In the early stages after hurting someone, they might distract themselves. New people, new routines, fake confidence, forced happiness. They'll tell themselves a story that makes them feel justified. It wasn't that serious. She'll move on. I didn't need her anyway. That is their ego speaking, not their truth. Ego lives for immediate relief, not long-term reality. But life has a way of stripping ego down over time. Slowly, the distractions lose their novelty. The people they run toward don't offer the same depth, the same emotional safety, the same acceptance they once received from you. This is when the quiet ache begins. At first, it's subtle, a thought, a flashback, a moment of unexpected longing. They remember your kindness during an argument, the way you listened when they had nothing to give, the consistency you offered when they were inconsistent, the softness you carried even when they made you feel small. These memories don't hit all at once. They drip in slowly at inconvenient moments, chipping away at the comfort of the story they told themselves. Life doesn't hurt them with dramatic consequences. It hurts them with realizations that you were rare. That what they broke will not reappear in the next person, that the emotional safety they once took for granted isn't a common experience. They begin seeing patterns in their new interactions, moments where they find themselves comparing, missing, longing for something they dismissed. And that slow, dawning awareness is its own form of pain. At first, they may try to suppress it. They might double down on their decision, tell themselves they're happier. But emotional truth doesn't disappear, it waits for the right moment. And when life finally puts them in a situation where they need the very qualities you once gave them, patience, loyalty, genuine care, that's when the regret hits hardest. It's not about karma punishing them, it's life showing them that every action has a cost. Hurting someone who loved them becomes a debt that gets paid through empty connections, unmet needs, and emotional restlessness. Life hurts them not by destroying them, but by confronting them with the contrast between what they had and what they're left with. And the most painful part, they realize the person they hurt is now healing, growing, and becoming someone they no longer have access to. The version of you they took for granted no longer exists. You evolved past them while they stayed stuck in the consequences of their choices. And this slow unraveling, this slow realization, is far more powerful than any revenge you could ever plan, because it comes from life itself, not you, and nothing hits harder than clarity arriving too late. There comes a moment in every story of heartbreak where the person who caused you pain finally begins to feel the weight of their own actions. Not because you wished it, not because you orchestrated it, but because life has a way of circling back and holding people accountable through experience. The third keynote is about that moment, the moment life mirrors their behavior back to them. When they finally encounter someone who treats them the way they once treated you, it doesn't just sting, it forces them to confront a truth they spent a long time avoiding. At first, people who hurt others often believe they are untouched by consequences. They assume they can behave carelessly, take love without giving it back, dismiss feelings, walk away when things get tough, and somehow still receive loyalty, consistency, and affection from the next person. That's the illusion. Life doesn't let those patterns continue forever. Eventually, they meet someone who brings their behavior full circle. Maybe it's someone emotionally unavailable, someone who gives them mixed signals, someone who disappears when they need closeness, someone who devalues their emotions the same way they once devalued yours, and suddenly all the excuses they once used, You're too sensitive. It's not a big deal. You're overreacting. Don't work on the other side. It's in those moments that empathy grows, often painfully. They start understanding what it felt like for you to wait for a message that never came, to question your worth because of someone else's inconsistency, to feel safe one moment and dismissed next. It's not that they become emotional overnight. It's that life puts them in the exact emotional position they put you in. And this is where the discomfort begins. They feel confused. They feel insecure. They feel the sting of being an option instead of a priority. That discomfort isn't random. It's a reflection. It's life saying, now feel what you made someone else feel. And here's the part that hits hardest for them. While they're learning these lessons, you're no longer there waiting for them. You're healing, you're rebuilding, you're learning your own patterns, strengthening your boundaries, and reconnecting with your self-worth. They experience the emotional turbulence after you've already stepped into clarity. That timing isn't a coincidence. It's growth happening on opposite timelines. When life mirrors their behavior back to them, it also exposes something they tried to ignore. They weren't the strong, detached, unaffected person they pretended to be. Their behavior wasn't confidence, it was avoidance. Their coldness wasn't emotional strength, it was fear of intimacy. Their silence wasn't power, it was immaturity. And now, seeing someone else treat them with the same indifference forces them to realize that emotional games don't feel empowering when you're on the receiving end. They feel destabilizing. They feel humiliating. They feel deeply lonely. This experience often becomes the beginning of their regret, not because they suddenly miss you, but because they finally understand you. They see the depth of the love you gave, the patience you offered, the vulnerability you shared, all without punishment or manipulation. And now that they're living what they put you through, they can finally see that your reactions were never dramatic. They were human. You weren't asking for too much. You were asking for the bare minimum. That realization alone can break a person open in ways silence never could. Life doesn't hurt them to be cruel. It hurts them to wake them up. And the very lesson they avoided learning with you becomes the lesson they cannot escape in their next chapter. Through the mirror of their own behavior, they see the truth. They didn't lose you because you were weak. They lost you because you finally understood your worth. There's a moment in every story of regret where silence becomes louder than any words you could have spoken. It's the moment when he realizes that the emotional access he once had to you, the closeness, the reassurance, the care has quietly disappeared. Not because you wanted revenge, but because you finally chose peace over pain. The fourth keynote is about the way regret grows in the empty spaces left behind when you stop giving someone the parts of you they used to take for granted. It's a slow ache for him, the kind that doesn't strike all at once, but creeps in through the tiny moments where your absence becomes undeniable. When you cared about him, it was effortless for him to receive your energy. You were the person who understood his moods, who noticed when something was wrong, who tried to make things easier even when he didn't deserve it. You cared instinctively, naturally, and he got used to that. He got used to being able to come back after disappearing. He got used to you sending the first message. He got used to your emotional presence without having to offer much of his own. When someone grows accustomed to being cared for without putting in effort, they start believing it will always be there. They mistake your love for obligation, and that's where his blindness began. But something changes when you finally step back. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. It's the quiet that gets him, the lack of your usual check-ins. The way your energy no longer leans in, the way your messages are shorter or not sent at all. He notices that your tone is different, that your warmth isn't automatic, that your attention isn't guaranteed. And this is where regret begins to bloom for him, because your silence isn't anger, It's transformation. You didn't stop caring overnight. You stopped prioritizing someone who didn't value what you gave. Regret grows in the places where your love used to soften his world. When something good happens and he instinctively reaches for his phone, but remembers you're not the person he can casually share it with anymore. When something bad happens and he looks for the comfort you used to provide, only to realize he no longer has access to that version of you. When he scrolls through conversations and realizes he never matched your effort, when he sees that you're not waiting, chasing, or hoping anymore, that your life is moving forward without the emotional pause he assumed you'd stay in. He may not admit it, but part of his regret comes from watching the care he once took lightly now be directed somewhere else, toward yourself, toward your growth, maybe toward someone who actually deserves it. He sees you becoming harder to reach, harder to impress, harder to manipulate with the same patterns that used to work. And that shift hits him deeper than any confrontation would have, because regret isn't born from your pain, it's born from the loss of your presence. People don't feel the weight of what they had until it's no longer available. What he's experiencing now isn't punishment, it's revelation. When someone loses access to your heart, they lose the privilege of your softness. And once you've healed enough to give that softness to yourself instead, he's left standing in the shadow of what he didn't protect. Every moment of silence from you becomes a reminder of what he could have built but didn't. Every boundary you hold becomes proof of the strength he underestimated. And every day that passes without your emotional investment becomes another day where regret quietly tightens its grip on him. He's not just missing you, he's missing the version of you that loved him deeply. And that version is gone because he broke it. Now he has to live with the awareness that he will never have access to it again. There's something profoundly unsettling for someone who hurt you when they finally see you healing. Not pretending, not seeking their attention, not using distractions to numb the pain, but genuinely transforming. Because your healing does something they never expected, it removes the power they once had. And when that power disappears, life starts showing them the sharp contrast between who you are becoming and who they chose to be. That contrast is where their regret begins to deepen. In the beginning, he may have believed that you would stay emotionally tied to him forever. Even after he hurt you, he thought he could still access your heart whenever he wanted. People who take love for granted often assume the person they wounded will remain the same, still caring, still available, still waiting. But healing doesn't preserve who you were, it creates someone new, and that transformation is what exposes everything he failed to appreciate. As you begin to rise again, something shifts. Your voice becomes clearer, your boundaries become firmer, your standards become non-negotiable. You start choosing yourself in moments where you used to choose him. You stop making excuses for his behavior, you stop blaming yourself for his emotional immaturity, you stop revolving your world around someone who didn't know how to hold your heart. That shift doesn't just change your life, it reveals the truth he refused to see when he had you. Your confidence returns in ways he didn't expect. You smile differently, you move through the world with a sense of self-worth that no longer depends on how someone else treats you. You begin doing things for yourself, things that once depended on his validation. You rediscover the parts of yourself that dimmed in his presence. You begin glowing with the kind of power that only comes from surviving something that tried to break you. And here's what happens. Your growth becomes the mirror he never wanted to look into. He sees the strength you've built and realizes he never contributed to it. He sees your peace and recognizes he was once the source of your chaos. He sees your joy and is forced to remember the tears he caused. Your healing highlights every failure he tried to ignore. Without you saying a word, your transformation confronts him with the truth of his own behavior. This is where life begins to hurt him slowly, not through revenge, not through punishment, but through awareness. He starts comparing what you've become with the version of you he mistreated, and he realizes the opportunity he lost. He sees that the love you offered was genuine, rare, deep. He understands that while he stayed stagnant, you evolved into someone emotionally stronger, wiser, and more grounded. That growth exposes his inability to rise with you, and nothing hurts quite like seeing someone thrive without you when you once had the chance to grow beside them. Even more painful for him is understanding that he no longer has access to this version of you, the healed version, the empowered version, the woman who knows her worth and refuses to settle. He can't reach her the way he once could, because she's no longer operating from the wounds he exploited. She's operating from the wisdom she earned. You outgrew the version of yourself that needed him, and that realization becomes the slow, quiet ache he carries. Your healing doesn't just free you, it traps him in the consequences of his choices. Every step you take forward is a reminder that he stayed behind. Every new boundary you set shows him what he lost. Every moment of peace you experience becomes proof that he was never your safe place. And every bit of happiness you rebuild reveals how much happier you can be without him. Life isn't punishing him, it's teaching him. Through your transformation, he learns the lesson he refused to learn when he had the chance. Losing someone who loved deeply hurts far more than never having them at all. And that truth, revealed slowly over time, becomes the regret he can't escape. There comes a point where the hurt he caused you stops being about him and starts becoming part of his own journey, whether he realizes it or not. This is about understanding that life isn't punishing him, it's teaching him, not in dramatic ways, not in cinematic karma, but in the slow, steady unfolding of consequences that align perfectly with the lessons he refused to learn when he had the chance. When he hurt you, he was operating from a place of avoidance, ego, and emotional immaturity. He didn't pause to reflect, to understand, or to grow. But life has a way of ensuring that the lessons we dodge eventually become the lessons we face head on. People often confuse the universe's way of balancing things with revenge, but they are not the same. Revenge is reactive. Lessons are inevitable. What he's feeling now isn't a result of you wishing him harm. It's the natural outcome of patterns he never corrected. When someone mistreats the one person who genuinely cared, life doesn't punish them by taking something away. It teaches them by revealing what they failed to value. It puts them in situations where their old behaviors no longer work, where their emotional shortcuts collapse, and where the truth they avoided becomes unavoidable. He may have once walked through life believing that detachment was strength, that vulnerability was weakness, that apologies were optional. He might have believed that he could treat people carelessly and still receive loyalty, comfort, and affection. But life teaches differently. It introduces him to relationships that force him to face every flaw he once ignored. People who won't tolerate his inconsistency, people who won't chase him when he pulls away, people who mirror his emotional distance, leaving him confused and insecure. These experiences aren't coincidences. They are the curriculum of growth, and the hardest lessons often come in silence. Not the silence between you and him, but the silence within him when he finally sits with himself. For the first time, he begins to understand that what he lost wasn't just a person, it was a mirror of what real love looks like. Life is showing him that the love he once took for granted was his opportunity to grow, to show up, to mature emotionally. And because he missed that opportunity, he now has to learn through discomfort, through loneliness, through relationships that don't feel as safe, through accountability he can no longer escape. It's important to understand that the way life affects him now isn't meant to break him, just like his actions weren't meant to break you. Life is simply leveling out what was unbalanced. He's learning empathy because he's experiencing the emotion he once dismissed. He's learning vulnerability because he's feeling the insecurity he once created. He's learning the value of genuine connection because he's recognizing how rare it truly is. He's learning about loss because he never learned how to care when he had something worth keeping. And the irony is that your healing accelerates his lessons. As you grow, life shows him the distance between who you've become and who he still is. That gap becomes the very space where his lessons take root. He sees that your strength didn't come from being untouched by pain. It came from facing it and choosing to rise. Meanwhile, he never faced the consequences of his actions until life placed them directly in front of him. He can no longer deny what his behavior cost him, because the results are written in his reality. He lost someone who loved him in ways he may never find again. This slow hurt he feels isn't life seeking balance. It's life offering him a chance to evolve, a chance he didn't take when love was right in front of him. And while you move forward with clarity, wisdom, and emotional freedom, he moves through the path he denied himself earlier. Not because he deserves punishment, but because he needs growth. And this time, life won't let him avoid the lesson. In the end, his hurt didn't define you, it refined you. And the regret he feels now isn't your victory, it's his awakening. Your strength, your healing, and your growth are the proof that life always aligns itself with truth. You didn't need revenge, you didn't need closure, you just needed to rise. And by doing that, you became the lesson he'll never forget, and the woman he'll never get back.